For this equivalent fraction, I want to write it in the form of, instead of a half, 2 over something. How do I get from 1 to the 2? I multiply by 2. To keep the fraction equivalent, what I do on the top, I must do on the bottom. So 2 times 2 is 4. So that is an equivalent fraction. I'm now changing it to eighths. I can go back to the original fraction, or I could go from this fraction. I'm going to start with the original. 2 times what is 8? Well, I'll multiply it by 4. 2 times 4 is 8. So I must do the same to the top. So that's 1 times 4 is 4. The next fraction on the top, I've got 5. How did I get from 1 to 5? I multiplied by 5. Therefore, 2 times 5 is 10. So those are all equivalent fractions. All right. A third. How do I get from the 3 to the 6? I'm changing it from thirds to sixths. Well, 3 times 2 is 6. What I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. 1 times 2 is 2. So here we have equivalent fractions. Going back to the original, how do I get from 1 to 4? Well, I multiply by 4. What I do to the top, I must do to the bottom. 3 times 4 is 12. And now on the top, this is called the numerator. The bottom is the denominator. The numerator here is 12. 1 times what is 12? Times 12. 3 times 12 is 36. 12 plus 12 plus 12 is 36. So now I've got 4 equivalent fractions. 2 to 4. How do I get from 2 to 4? I multiply by 2. What I do to the top, I do to the bottom. 5 times 2 is 10. This time I'm working with 25ths. How do I get from 5 to 25? Well, I multiply by 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. For the next one, it's out of 20. And instead of going back to the original, I'm going to look at this one. How do I get from 10 to 20? Well, I double it. So I'm going to double the bottom as well. 25 times 2 is 50. Right, 7 ninths. 7 times what is 14? Times 2. What I do to the top, I do to the bottom. 9 times 2, 18. How then do I get to 27ths? I'm going to go back to the 9. 7 ninths. 9 times what is 27? It's times 3. So it's got to be 7 times 3, 21. Then I'm looking at 90ths. I'm going back to the original. 9 times what is 90? Times 10. So 7 times 10 is 70. Now in this part, E, first fraction is incomplete. So we've got to look at the second fraction for our starting point. How do you get from 28 to 14? Well, this time you divide by 2. So I divide by 2 up top. 26 divided by 2 is 13. Now I can go from my first fraction to this fraction. How do I get from 14 to 140? Multiplied by 10. So I must do the same to the top. 13 times 10, 130. Then I have the top number is 260. What goes on the bottom? Well, you could go back to the 26 over 28. 26 times 10 gives you 260. So I must multiply this by 10 and get 280. Okay. So that's part 3. Again, if you want to stop the video and go and do question 3, it's up to you. Right. Next, we've got finding a fraction of a value. Now, I'm hoping that you know to find half of something, you divide it by 2. To find a third, you divide by 3. To find a 12th, you divide by 12. Now, to find 2/3 of something, you divide by 3, that gives you 1/3, and then you want to double it. 2/3 is twice 1/3. So you divide by 3, then multiply by 2. I've put these values in here so you can see the pattern. In other words, to find a fraction of, you take the number, you divide it by the bottom of the fraction, and then you multiply it by the top. Now, when you multiply by 1, it doesn't change it, but that's part of the rule. So divide by the bottom, multiply by the top. Divide by the bottom, multiply by the top. Let's try part A. It says find a fifth of £25. So that's 25, divide by the bottom, multiply by the top. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 5 times 1 is 5. And remember, it's pounds you're working in. Finding 2/3 of 24. So we take the value, the number, 24. We divide it by the bottom and then multiply it by the top. 24 divided by 3 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. There we go. Don't forget your pound sign. Next question, we've got find 3/7 of £35. So that's 35 divided by 7 times 3. Divide by the bottom, multiply by the top. 35 divided by 7 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15, and it's pounds. This question, it says find 7/10 of 121 kilograms. So we've changed the units. So that's 121, divide by the bottom, multiply by the top. 121 divided by 11 is 11. 11 times 77, 11 times 7 is 77, and that is kilograms. All right. Now, I've popped one down here just at the end. That's quite a tricky one, but you could do it with a calculator. That's fine. It says find 14/17 of 3,400. Don't let the big numbers put you off. Do the exact same method. The number, 3,400, divide by the bottom, multiply by the top. So that divided by that is 200. 200 times that is 2800. 2,800. Okay? That would probably be a calculator question. So, again, that's part 4. If you want to stop and do part 4 questions, that's fine. Right. Last one. Equivalent fractions, decimals and percentages, and how to change between them. So these will all be questions. Question 5. So, now this might look slightly complicated, so we'll just go over it one step at a time. This is how we change between fractions, decimals and percentages. To change a fraction to a decimal, we take the top number of the fraction and divide it by the bottom. So that's numerator divided by denominator, if you use those terms. To get from a decimal to a percentage, we multiply by 100. To get from a percentage to a decimal, we divide by 100. And then finally, to get from a percentage back to a fraction, we write our percentage as a fraction because a percentage is measured out of 100. So whatever our percentage is, say it was 14, it would be 14 out of 100. 27%, 27 out of 100. And then you would simplify the fraction. So this is one I hope we all know. We should know that a half is equal to 0.5, which is 50%. If we follow the rules, top divided by bottom, 1 divided by 2 gives you 0.5. Then 0.5 times 100 is 50. Okay? Right, so let's change some fractions to percentages. 7/10, so that's 7 divided by 10 is 0.7. Then you multiply it by 100 and you will get 70%. 24/50, so it's 24 divided by 50. You put that in a calculator and you'll get 0.48. 0.48 times 100, decimal point moves 2 places, you get 48%. And then the last one here is, oh, it's not, sorry, I've got a few more. 4/5. So we've got 4 divided by 5. Put that in a calculator, you get 0.8. Multiply it by 100, and you will get 80%. Okay. I've got a few more here. Let's try these. I'm going to keep the diagram there. 25% is 25 100ths. Top divided by bottom. That will give you... Oh no, so we're going to do it differently. Right, I can just edit this out. Okay, in these questions we're changing percentages to fractions. That's percentage to a fraction. So we make up the fraction out of 100. That's 25 out of 100. 25 and 100, I would say, let's start, we'll divide by 5. That gives us 5/20ths. Then I'm going to divide by 5 again, and I get a quarter. So if you don't know 25% is a quarter, that's one way of doing it. Then we have 30%, so that's 30 out of 100. I can divide top and bottom by 10, and that gives me 3/10. And that is my final answer there. It cannot be simplified. 46%, so that's 46 out of 100. 46 and 100 are both even numbers, so I can divide it by 2, and I will get 23 out of 50. So 23/50 is the final answer. Then we have 8%, so that's 8 out of 100. I'm going to divide top and bottom by 4, because I know 4 is a factor of both 8 and 100. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 100 divided by 4 is 25. 2 and 25, that's the lowest you can go when simplifying. So that's your final answer, 2/25. Okay? Right. Now, if you haven't already started the questions, that's what you should be trying next. And we'll get back to you with next week's work. Thank you.